Okay, hello everybody, and welcome back to the second part of the periodic table 101. Not including the lanthanides, although it says including the lanthanides there. I was going to ask, as we've only got two people here, I was going to ask if anyone had any thoughts since last time on what we did, or any insights, or any eureka moments. But I'm just gonna go ahead, I think, and let's just refresh ourselves, refresh our memory of what the basis of what we're talking about here is. And we're going to start with this periodic table series. I'm not going to go through it all, but just to remind ourselves about these are the rows going across the periodic table. Hydrogen series being existence, true, being real or unreal. Ego, individual, is carbon series, that's childhood. Then silica series is teenagers and friends and family. Iron series about work, ordinary work, task and duty. Silver series, scientists, art, music, etc. Religion as well. And the gold series, leaving out lanthanides for now, the gold series is about power, leadership, management, king being king or queen, or not. So you've got the polarity there, of course. And also it's where the problem is in the patient is it about work? Is it about sort of relationships in a kind of family, friend, teenage kind of sense? Is it about childhood fears, for example, in the carbon series? Okay, and then if we're going to look at we're going to go through each of the stages, and we're going to look at cases that demonstrate and illustrate each of the stages. So, but just to give an overview, it's starting. This is the columns going down the periodic table. Let's have a just quick look at the periodic table. There it is. So these are the columns going down from 1 to 18, which reflect a cycle of development. I can find the page again. Where are we now? Get in there. Come on now. I don't know if I can past it. Wait a minute. There it is. Okay, so 1 is about the birth of something. It could be the birth of a person. It could be the birth of a project as well. Then we work through 2, 3, 4, 5, increasing confidence till we reach 10, stage 10, which is the center of the periodic table. Just as an aside, by the way, that Scholten, in fact, redistributed a few of the elements on the periodic table. He revised the periodic table to make it fit his model a bit better. In other words, and what he did was he put carbon and silica, which would have been normally in the periodic table, the carbon and the silica are on the right-hand side. But he put them right in the center. He put them in stage 10. So that was the only thing he did, I think. But it made more sense of the model for homeopathic purposes anyway. And then after stage 10, we've got a decline. First of all, holding on to what we've achieved, then kind of fighting to maintain what we've achieved, and sort of seeing enemies everywhere, and then being overwhelmed, and then sort of resentment, and then kind of feeling numb, and then sort of kind of death, and then sort of just the embers, or in stage 16, the oxidation and the sort of the ashes. That's all that's left. And memories. And then 17 is the real sort of letting go of everything, and stage 18 is rest and retreat. So we were looking at stage 1. I think we got up to stage 3. So let's just go through here, see where we got up to. I think we did stage 3. So I won't do that again. I think yttrium carb, there's a little plug for my next lanthanides webinars coming up in October. I don't know why I've put, that's not in September, that's in October. Anyway, so now stage 4 we're up to, and each of the stages has been assigned also a miasm. And so stage 4, you've kind of got measles seen as a kind of, it says going through a gateway, a door. And in a way, you know, if you think about children, when they get the measles, in a way, they dispel lots of fears. It's a way in which the child kind of moves to the next stage of their development. Measles is a very important, I think measles is a very important infection for children, even though it's been eliminated. Maybe that explains a lot. But anyway, stage 4 is going through a gateway. It's a door. It's it could be the psychic or spiritual gateway to wisdom. It's also the start, the official start of something. It's the signing on the dotted line of something, a new start. Whereas stage 1 is really sort of like the birth. It's the impulsive birth. It's just coming into a being. But stage 4 is kind of like more of a sort of like, okay, we've got our shit together, and now this is something really serious. We're going to start properly here, a new start. It can be also about the starting something and then only sort of half finishing it, starting okay, but then it fails. So the great thing about this model is we can see somebody come in. Let's see. Oh, got somebody coming in. The great thing is that it allows us to see maybe situations with our patients that perhaps we couldn't pigeonhole before. You know, they may have just, you know, they may have said something like, oh yeah, it all started, you know, when I started my business, that's when it really, I got ill. So this model is really amazing, I think, for it says amazing, there we go, at giving us new possibilities for identifying situations that our patients are going through and addressing that. So it is, it is amazing. They'll often say, I started it, and it is like when you start a business or you start a new project, or you say it's amazing, but it can also be about being half committed. I'm not going to read all of this. I'm just going to cherry pick the bits that I think are important. Or it can be also, it can be about being like the deer in the headlights. It's like, oh my God, I've started it and now I'm terrified. What is going to happen? Can I really do this? So there's a kind of frozen quality or a sort of shock of, oh my God, this is it. They want to commit themselves, but they're shocked. Can it really be done? It can also be a very irresolute. Can I do it? I can't do it. Can I do it? Can't do it. Dorothy, Wizard of Oz, if you think about her going over the rainbow, that's a little bit of stage 4. So that's, I hope that gives you like a little bit of insight into stage 4. Let's have a look at something, a case to illustrate this. This was very interesting. I was teaching in Iceland, and one of the students had a backache, and he had it for a while, and he treated himself with all kinds of the kind of standard remedies. So he'd had his Rustox and his Ruta and his Bellis and his Arnica, and nothing had done any good. So I asked him what was going on in his life, and he said, well, I've just signed a contract for starting my own clinic as a homeopath. And I asked him how he felt about that, and he said, I feel very anxious and uncertain, and the back pain started after that. And so from that, it was quite an easy prescription. At the time, I put homeopaths and clinics into the Silver series. It wasn't Iron series, because that's sort of standard kind of boring work. This is something a bit more creative. So it was in the Silver series, and also back problems, limb problems. It's a bit like sports injuries tend to be kind of Silver series as well. So I gave him zirconium metallicum. And by the end of the class, the backache had gone. Anyway, that's all I can say. So it was kind of remarkable, but again, gives us so many more possibilities and ways of looking at things. So that was a really good illustration. Let's go on to stage 5. Now, stage 5, which is the mumps, dengue fever, and malaria miasm, and the reason it's malaria tends to sort of come in waves, periodically. So that's why it's been put into stage 5, because it's like stage 5 is all about procrastination, hesitation. It's about planning. There's lots of ideas, but then it's sort of feeling a bit obstructed or hindered. They don't want to experience failure, so they're stuck in the preparation. And of course, we know patients who do this. Niobium is in the silver series in stage 5, and that's about sort of a creative funk, a sort of procrastination creatively. And there's a lot of perfectionism. There's some cowardice. They don't go for it for fear of not reaching it. There's an inferiority complex. They fear it will go wrong, so they cancel it. It's also the feeling of a mountain in front of you that's very important. And so it's like they just look at it and think, I can't do this. It's too much. Off and on relationships. Doubting, very careful and cautious. This is stage 5. Let's have a look at this. This is a woman that I treated in the 1990s. She's HIV positive. She has anorexia and bulimia, drug and a history of drug and alcohol addiction. And she was had a very sort of childlike, I suppose if I was to think of an ordinary remedy to give her, I would have thought of something like Ignatia, something like that. Very sort of childlike. She had a little voice of a child, a sort of given up, feeling a lot of shame, and mainly it came from her dad being quite dominant and kind of critical. Didn't really give her love that was unconditional. It was all like on the basis of that she wasn't either a success or not a success, and from that she kind of she was never going to be successful, basically. It was like a mountain to climb. And there we are, physically tired, listless, aching muscles, eczema on the face, cysts on the neck. Now anorexia and bulimia is often vanadium. So vanadium is stage 5 in the iron series, tortured by the idea of failure or success alternating with failure. It's actually, vanadium is a dietary stimulant. It actually stimulates the appetite, interestingly, and it is sometimes used like that. Postponing, procrastination, tortured by perfectionism. It's very, very interesting. This sort of stage idea, the idea of being tortured. They will often. There's a case I've got in my lanthanides webinar, which is a woman who, a woman who was tortured by either should she be a mother or should she go to work, and she kind of tortured herself with these two options. That is very stage 5. Should I do this or should I do that? But being tortured by that and can't make a decision is quite stage 5. So that's vanadium. Stage 6 is the diphtheria miasm, and here it's about kind of forcing yourself to go forwards with something, still feeling anxious about it, but sort of thinking, I'll just put on a brave face and I'll just kind of go for it. So it's challenging yourself. It's proving. Interesting about proving. I think maybe Hahnemann was a stage 6 person, because about provings and about, in a way, he had to prove that homeopathy worked, and it was a challenge. And along with that goes sort of some kind of hiding with a sort of tough exterior, but it's insecure. It's like the walk across the coals, where once you've started, you have to finish it, or walking across a bridge, or walking across a tightrope. You don't look down. You just have to kind of just keep going, even though you feel anxious. They daren't make one mistake, otherwise there's failure, like sporting things. So stage 2 and stage 6, a little bit similar. Stage 2 is hiding and doesn't face the inevitable, whereas stage 6 does face the inevitable. It pushes itself forward. Got a little bit of stuff about zinc and chromium there. You could confuse it with stage 8, which is much more about the hard work and persevering at something. And that's more about, being sort of exhausted from the amount of work and being a sort of workaholic in a way, whereas stage 6 hasn't reached that stage. It's about just making yourself face something. Okay, so let's have a look at this. Okay, this is an interesting. This was a friend of mine who he ran. I think he was an executive in a natural food supplement company, and he researched into alternative health strategies. Very, very interested in alternative health. I met him in South Africa, and he was very interested in my work with HIV and AIDS. And I went to visit him one day and found myself taking his case, because he said he'd fallen in love with a woman. He wanted to ask her to marry him, but he was kind of tortured about it. Should I do it? Shouldn't I do it? Forcing himself to do it, but he hadn't done it. And, so he was stuck in this tortured situation, and he's very loquacious. And there was a sense of I felt a little bit sort of like he's very, very energetic, and felt a kind of like a wind pushing me back, if you like. And the remedy I came up with was molybdenum sulfuricum. There we go. Who'd have thought it? That's probably never been given before. Molybdenum, which is stage 6 in the silver series. Again, he's involved in a kind of sciencey, artistic kind of endeavor. That's what he does. That's where he is. That's where he's in that sort of silver series, really. Stage 6, because there was this feeling of forcing himself to do something. I guess it could have been a stage 5, actually, which would have been niobium. But niobium is more about seeing something distant that you would love to have done. It's that sort of idea of being, seeing some creative endeavor which you would have loved to have done, but is just a mountain to climb. Whereas this is more like he's on the cusp of sort of asking her, and is sort of like forcing himself to do it. And the sulfuricum, because sulfuricum is about love and relationships, and he was very kind of quite sulfurish as well, very warm-blooded. And the next day, he actually took the remedy. And then I told him what the remedy was, and he said that is remarkable, because I was the person that did all the research into molybdenum as a food supplement, and introduced molybdenum to the UK market as a food supplement. So that was kind of really pretty amazing. he kind of went very quiet after the remedy. He sort of stopped talking. He said, "I can't talk." And then the following day, he popped the question to this woman, and as far as I'm aware, they're still married. They married, and it was a successful relationship. So that was kind of quite interesting. Stage 7, herpes miasm, which includes chickenpox and smallpox, and also Epstein-Barr. And sometimes these miasms can help us place, especially if the physicals, if somebody has got herpes, I will tend to think of stage 7, or at least it'll sort of be in my mind, could this be a stage 7 remedy? Practicing, this is about kind of refining what you've done so far. It's refining and practicing and training, leading to perfection. Teachers, helpers, childcare, nurses. Feedback is essential. Giving benevolence. I've said stage 11 is more. Stage 11 can be compared to this, because stage 11 is also quite protective in a way, and seeing the bigger picture and more responsibility. Manganum as a remedy, they need to be thanked if they do something for you. They need positive feedback. They say, they're the people that say, I don't mind if, I don't mind as long as somebody gives me feedback, as long as it's positive feedback. And they do like to be thanked. And the worst thing is if they do something for you and you don't even thank them. There's no lack of courage. You can do it. You want to learn more, exchange with others. Oh, no other way. Oh, how nice. How do you do this? So it's all about teaching and learning. This was a case I had, which was just such a beautiful case. Very simple. And again, it made the prescription so easy. He was basically a baker. He sprained his wrists through lifting a heavy tray out of the bakery oven at work. And at the same time, his wife, so he sprained his wrist joint, and his wife is pregnant, and he is spending all his spare time helping her. And what he said was, it was so funny. He said, she doesn't even thank me. That was his thing. He was kind of a bit resentful. He doesn't mind doing that, but as long as he's thanked for that. And so my mind, and of course, manganum is about joints as well. It can be about arthritic joints or sprained joints, or just joints in general. And so my mind went to manganum, sulfuricum. Manganum because of the need, the joints, the needing to be thanked, the helping his wife, and the sulfuricum is the sort of relationship, the wife. That's where that's his area of performance. And manganum sulfate cured, and it was just a lovely, lovely case. And it just slots in. You think, oh my goodness, that how would I have dealt with this case without this way of looking at things? Okay, this was another stage 7 case. A man came with tiredness, migraines with visual disturbances, history of double vision, then an eye op. He had chickenpox before the migraines started. So I'm immediately, my mind is going to stage 7, but just keeping that at the back of my mind. Works as a training consultant. There we go, more stage 7 stuff. Leadership, management, and sales. Loves to organize, wants to help people overseas. Did an art degree. Now he practices art in the studio at the bottom of his garden. So he doesn't feel, he's still practicing his art. He doesn't feel good enough to really sort of display it and show it to everybody. He's still practicing and refining his artistic skills. And so the remedy, what's the remedy? Anyone want to shout out this one? It's fairly straightforward. If you've got your periodic table there, anyone want to have a shot? Silence. You put something in there. So what is the 7th stage silver series? Maybe you don't know the symbol. It's technetium. I mean, technetium is a very rare metal, and so it's a sort of strange remedy to give, really. But it is about refining your artistic endeavors, about training, and that's the remedy I gave him, Technetium metallicum, and it cured. It was really great remedy for him. He needed a couple of other remedies as well. He needed, I think, some thuja, and some, was it thuja and psychotica, I think he got as well. But the technetium was really good. It really sort of, it really brought the case to a whole new level. And I would never have thought of it, say, without this way of thinking. Okay, stage 8, pertussis tetanus miasm. So now we've rolled up our sleeves and we're in the middle of the work, and it's heavy work. There's a lot of work to be done, and so we feel overworked. It's about endurance. We just focus on the task completely, totally absorbed. It's a heavy pressure, no time for learning, too much work to be done, just clenching your teeth and buckle down. When people say when they grind their teeth at night, I sometimes think of stage 8. Horses get tetanus. Horses are a bit of a stage 8 animal. They're sort of work horses. Someone who has to win, very ambitious. Nux vomica is stage 8, for example. Can have cramping, stuck joints, trigger finger, tremendous stress. Anemia, of course, is a lack of iron in the blood, and it's often comes from, so somebody's coming in. And just check that I've got everyone in. Yes. And whooping cough is also a sort of stage 8 thing as well. So stage 8. Actually, this was my mum. It was quite a while ago. This was 30 years ago, in fact. Was it 30 years ago? Something like that. And she'd had an argument with her mum, and there was always this thing between them. They would try and force their opinions on each other. She would always try to force her what she believed onto her mum, who of course resisted it. And so stage 8 is often pushing and then the resistance that comes back, and so there's always very hard work. And after the call, she would always go into this exhaustion. Sometimes she'd have to go to bed for a day or two because she was so exhausted and worried as well. And so the remedy, and she's very artistic person. She worked in the antiques business, very artistic. And so the remedy I gave her was ruthenium mur, ruthenium being the stage 8 silver series, convincing others, forcing your ideas onto others, convincing someone, forcing yourself to present your ideas as well, and the opposition against your creations as well. So a lot of hard work in the creative sphere. And the muriaticum, of course, is the mother. So ruthenium mur, easy, simple. And it was, I remember it was quite remarkable. She didn't have to go to bed for 2 days, which she normally did. And she said she felt this kind of intense worry for just a few seconds. And then after that, she let go, and all of it just passed her by, and she was fine. So it was kind of, it was fun. And it should be, and it is fun. Sometimes it can be fun. Playing with these ideas can be fun, and doesn't always work out, of course. But when it does, it makes it all worthwhile. Stage 9 is the plague miasm, the Yersinia. Yersinia is the plague nosode. there's two plague noses. There's pestis pestinum and also Yersinia enterocolitica, which have different remedy pictures. So this is about Yersinia, and stage 9 is all about being second. It's about almost being successful. It's almost, that's the kind of word. I almost made it. Someone who quits at the last hurdle. It's also related to rat energy, which tends to want to bring down the successful ones, sabotaging the ratus is very about sabotaging people. And people in stage 9 plague people in stage 10. Maybe you can think of some patients like that. The dress rehearsal, the finishing touches, and then it's something they don't quite make it. Something goes wrong. Pre-exams, we tend to give Arginate as a sort of exam remedy or a stage fright remedy, but actually there is an argument for the stage 9 elements being the exact pre-exam remedies. So cobalt and cobalt nitricum, and also maybe rhodium and or one of the rhodium salts. So I treated a young girl in Ireland, 15 years old. She'd lost her speech, and it all started after an exam where she pulled out at the last moment, not being able to face it. And she had a very pushy mum who was desperate for her to do well. And she obviously was feeling that pressure. And obviously there was more to this case than that, but the remedy I gave was cobaltum phos. Cobaltum, because it was like schoolboys at school, it tends to be iron series, and phosphoricum. So cobaltum is in stage 9 of the iron series, and phosphoricum is about talking and communication. So she couldn't speak and she pulled out at the last moment, cobaltum phosphoricum, and she got her voice back. So kind of interesting case, and I don't know what I would have done really without this way of looking at things. So there we have it. And then we get to stage 10. So we've reached, this is the pinnacle and the peak of the periodic table, the center of the periodic table, the stage of success. This is Lord and Master. But with that sort of being successful, there's a kind of rigidity that can come in. There's obviously a haughtiness, as we know from Plotina being in stage 10, and also stuff about balance, because you could fall off, couldn't you? You could fall off. It's like the tower in the tarot. You could fall off that. Stage 10 nosodes, Medarinum, so because this is the psychotic miasm. Flavus is very interesting remedy. I give this to patients sometimes that they exaggerate their symptoms. You have a case where, I don't know, you give all the different remedies and nothing seems to work, and then you just feel like they're kind of exaggerating things, and it has quite a lot of interesting physicals as well. The flavus bacillus in the nose is a nasal, like in the mucus in the nose. So there's a lot of sinus problems, a lot of hot flushes, a lot of anxiety, a little bit like arsenicum. So it's a remedy worth remembering. Psychotico need the limelight, so that's very sort of stage 10. Meningococcinum can be used for migraines and extend into the neck. That aren't ameliorated by well-known remedies. So that's a Medarinum can follow well after a stage 10 remedy. So this was a girl I treated, I think a couple of years ago. She just came with a flu-y cold. She's an au pair from Germany. She went home to Germany after some years with an English family. Now she's weepy, feeling lost, feels like a visit to Germany, doesn't know where her home is, and her hands are dry and cracked. And so the remedy I gave her was Graphites. And Graphites is such an interesting remedy and very different from kind of what we're taught, that we're taught about the sort of slow, sluggish, get there in the end kind of person. But that's not how I see it. I mean, that's one aspect of it. But there's also some Graphites can be for the successful person, somebody who's actually doing it and is quite successful, but then have a wobble. And I use it sometimes as an intercurrent, maybe after a remedy where the patient has this kind of wobble, they feel like everything, their life's crumbling, things are changing, and they don't quite know where to go with this, and they feel lost. Often they feel lost and they feel weepy, and it can look very much like pulsatilla. But it's just like the structure of their life is wobbling and is crumbling. It may be that they've just moved home. It may be that they've just a relationship is broken up, and they're just feeling sort of weepy and unsure about themselves and insecure and sort of wobbly. And that is Graphites, and Graphites sorted out that girl. So very, very interesting remedy that is. Stage 11 is the cholera miasm or the norovirus miasm. And so stage 10 is really success, but stage 11 is holding on to success. You know, if you think of cuprum, the rigidity is almost like the cramping that's holding on too tightly to things. And but it's also about guarding. There's a certain benevolence about stage 11. It's about maintaining, it's about sort of having the responsibility, you know, the guardian of the family, or the guardian, it could be the guardian of a company, for example, maintaining, keeping, protecting. It's being sort of serious and sort of being very effective and being very I can't think of the words. Words aren't coming to me. But anyway, they want to enjoy what they've achieved. They want to hold on to their money. They conserve. They're very conservative. It can be orthodox religion. They can be pushy mums. They can be over influential in others' lives. It's also physically, it's about benign growths, benign tumors, sort of expansion of tissue, but not cancer really, but sort of benign. They're also can be gentlemanly or gentlewomanly, this kind of benevolence. They tend to want to control themselves. That's the thing. There's a sort of certain dignity and a control about them. There was, with the cholera miasm, there's always the spectre of death. So this leads to cramping and holding on. We talked about stage 7 being more assisting and helping. Stage 11 is more responsible, more protective. So this was I had a woman who was a successful interior designer. She had bronchitis. This was some years ago. I don't really I think I probably lost the notes somewhere, but I do remember she had a restlessness and a desire for work. And the remedy I gave her was Argentum iodatum, which, you know, Argentum, when you think of Argnit is about holding, you have this, when you're you're performing, it's about a lot of energy is coming up, and it's about being able to maintain and hold on to that energy so that it doesn't go off in all directions. And that's the fear, the terror that it could all go wrong, everything could explode and you could just go wrong. So that's Argentum nitricum. So Argentum iodatum is slightly different, about holding on with work and busyness and restlessness, and has a lot of sort of lung issues as well. So that was Argentum iodatum. This was there was a 52-year-old woman, hypertension, overweight mother with 3 children, worries a lot about them, takes her responsibility very seriously. And the remedy I gave her was aurum muriaticum. Again, overly responsible. And the muriaticum is very much about family and looking after your family and being the mum, being sort of the responsible mum, and then worrying. Aurum muriaticum, there's a lot of worry goes along with aurum muriaticum. And then another one, a hypertension, a man with hypertension and depression and sleep apnea. And he's a gay man separated from his partner and is quite depressed about it. He works for the NHS as a manager of children's mental health. So he's very responsible. He's got a very responsible job, but it's about caring for kids and caring for people. And so there is a sort of muriaticum aspect there. But I decided to go with aurum muriaticum natum. He was very sarcastic. He was from Liverpool. A lot of Scousers have this kind of sarcastic aspect to them, and he was definitely that. And I found that aurum muriaticum natum has this kind of sarcastic quality, apparently. And now this remedy was brilliant for this man, and did more than I expected. It actually cured his sleep apnea, which was quite remarkable. He was able to stop using his machine, his PAP machine at night, and brought him out of the depression, and was a very, very good remedy. But again, without this way of looking at things, I may not have come to that remedy. Probably would have just given him aurum. But this is more precise prescribing. You're all very quiet. Do you have any questions at this stage? Any comments, questions? Pipe up, speak up. Don't be shy.
Jonathan, is the natum like a sodium?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's right. So it's basically a mixture of aurum and natmur.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, exactly.
Jonathan, you're not mentioning potencies.
No. One, because I normally find that they're not quite so important. When you get a really good remedy, they're not so important. But I normally just give, a 200 in these kind of cases. I would give a 200 or a 1M, where I feel it fits well. If they're a bit fragile, or I'm not sure whether it's the right remedy, then I might start with a 30, so I don't disturb them or aggravate them in any way. For if they've got sort of certain, if they've got a lot of physical things going on, I might start with 30s repeated and then work up in potency. But often 200 or 1M.
Thank you.
Mental stuff going on.
And I'm sorry, I'm afraid I've got a meeting now. I have to say goodbye, but I look forward to the recording, and I enjoy your lecture very much.
Good. Okay. Thank you. Bye.
Can I ask another quick question, Jonathan?
Yeah.
So just with the carbon, is it always Graphaites, or could it be diamond? Is it an allotrope? Is it always does it matter?
So that's a good question. So yeah, I didn't mention diamond, but the Graphaites with diamond, they tend to be more ambitious and a bit. They are harder, like the diamond. They tend to be. There's a lot of stuff about not being able to see where they're going, but feeling. But there's kind of a much more ambitious and much harder, a harder person. The graphite is more for a normal person, a normal person who sort of is crumbling. Graphite is very soft. It's a very soft substance and crumbles very easily. And so, but yeah, there is I think there is a connection, and the diamond. Yeah, I would give diamond where I feel maybe it's for somebody who is at the top of the executive tree in a company or something like that, where they are, they're sort of very, very they have a lot of responsibility, and there's a lot of pressure on them, much more pressure maybe than the Graphites.
Thank you.
Okay, no probs. Stage 12 is cancer, the cancer miasm, and it's about overdoing things, repeating things. You know, it's like cancer is a disease which grows, it repeats, the cells just repeat, but without any kind of structure or any kind of sense behind them. It just sort of, it's just automatically repeating. And patients will often repeat their routines. For example, cadmium, it could be for a musician who's on a tour, who's repeating the same thing night after night without deviation. Zincum is in stage 12, and that has a lot of stuff about repeating exams at school. I mean, you know, when people have those, the dreams that they're back at school repeating their exams, that's a bit of a Zincum thing. And it's also about, it's the stage where people are under threat. Their sort of their sense of self is under threat, and they fight. There's a lot of fighting, and there's a lot of enemies and suspicion and manipulation, and then along with that, corruption, suspiciousness, and then pollution is a bit like sort of creating sort of things, sort of creating something that is not needed. It's like just overdoing something, making copies. You know that Andy Warhol picture of the Campbell soup cans, you know, repeating the image over and over again. Because I looked at his health history, and he had chorea as a child. He was quite a hypochondriac. He had quite a lot of illnesses as a child. What else? It's the real fighting stage. Will fight because they feel attacked, that they feel that people want to take something away from them, and they have to be on guard all the time. They have to have complete control over everything. That control is definitely the key word in stage 12, because they're just about to lose everything. So if you see something, shoot first, ask questions later. You must defend yourself. So let's see what we got here. This was a woman I treated in Ireland, and she came with chronic fatigue and night sweats, and it started after her husband hit her. And now, although they live in the same house, they have separate bedrooms and they don't talk. So in a way, it's a bit like the husband became her enemy. So this was quite well. I remember I gave a few different remedies first of all, and then I just came to this idea that he was her enemy, and so the remedy I gave was cinnabaris, which is one of the Merck salts. Merck is the sort of, especially with the night sweats. She was quite a big woman as well, sort of quite a gold, serious looking woman. And then the sulfuricum, of course, is the relationship, the husband, suspicious of the husband. And although it didn't get them back together, it sort of, her chronic fatigue went, and she was healthy again from that point of view. Stage 13, malaria and the fungal stage. So there's a kind of sense of withdrawal in stage 13. It's sort of half fighting is how I'd describe it. Then there can be like cynicism, half arguing, half retreated, stubborn, listening out of politeness, starting to feel powerless, sulking, angry but holds inside. And then there's a kind of nostalgia for things in the past, interest in history, archaeology, sort of looking backwards, museums. They can be dogmatic, skeptical, homeopathy skeptics, nostalgic as well. Atmosphere is musty or moldy. dogged determination to hold on to things, passive aggressive. And there's sort of over intellectualization. It's almost like the spirit is going out of the person. There's now an over intellectualization. They're sort of involved in the culture but removed from it. Like Indium is in stage 13 in the Silver series. This could be the museum curator or an antique dealer, an art curator, observing artists, not actually an artist themselves. Self-mutilation, tattooing. I'm not quite sure why that's there, but it is. Frustration, contempt and scorn towards others, being scorned and object of contempt, sarcasm, strong distrust. There's, I think what you often see though is this kind of resentment. There's often a resentment towards something. They can't express all their anger. Or they're always looking back to the good old days. That can be a stage 13 thing as well. So this was a man in Ireland I treated. He had arthritis. He's an old timer. He bemoans the loss of the old times. He's nostalgic and grumpy. And he was warm-blooded, throwing the covers off at night. And I decided to give him gallium sulph. So gallium is an interesting one. It can be like kids who sort of withdraw from their work, who just decide they don't want to work anymore, they don't want to be at school anymore, and they just withdraw. That can be gallium, useful remedy for kids. Stage 14, poliomyosm. And now this is a kind of numbness creeps in. It's a kind of grayness, paralysis, rigidity. It's like the spirit has now really kind of leaving the body completely, making a pretense of doing something, passionless, empty. They become intellectual about things, sort of one step further on though from stage 13. An over intellectualization involved in the culture but removed from it, empty shell. They divert attention. For example, they can laugh at things, but you feel like it's not a real laugh. It sort of diverts from the real problem. It can be some comedians could need a stage 14 remedy. They can be formal or distant or bored or blasé, or they hide behind a mask. Here we are: renal problems, high blood pressure, chronic fatigue, frightened by authorities, or they can do dangerous things. It's almost like to make them feel alive again. I will do it, and I don't care. Been there, done that. I suppose also self-harming, just to feel alive again. They feel numb. Plum bum is forced retirement. Margaret Thatcher was definitely a plum bum character. Yeah, she, after she retired, she basically went downhill quite quickly. Yeah, numbness, people with a tattoo detached from their body. Formality and underlying atrophy are detached from circumstances due to wounds and trauma. A modern paralytic quality you see in chronic fatigue, ALS, MS, environmental allergies. You have to make your environment safe. People who need poliomyosm are trying to make everything grey. There's a strong distrust. And although I've not used polio nosode, I think it's probably could be a very useful remedy as an intercurrent, maybe. So a woman I treated with MS, and she had the typical symptoms: difficulty walking, spasms, limbs feel heavy. Yet, conversely, she was very warm and bubbly and sympathetic. And so I gave her plumbum phosphoricum. And so plumbum obviously has a lot of MS symptoms, but there was the phosphoric aspect, which the plumbum on its own didn't cover. And so she did really well on that. Plumbum phosphoricum, useful remedy. I think a lot of MS patients could usefully do plumbum phos. Who is this now? Whoops. Oh yes, this is my ex-business partner. who had a chest infection and exhaustion. His wife had died. He's missing his best friend. And he says it's like being in a waiting room, waiting for something to happen. And he had this empty, hollow feeling in his chest. And that's a very significant symptom. The hollowness, in a way, symbolic of the sort of emptiness that he feels inside. Empty, hollow feeling in the chest, along with the chest infection. Works as a celebrity hairdresser. Talks like he's always laughing, but you always feel like the laughing is sometimes a bit sort of just to kind of cover up perhaps a vulnerability. And the remedy was Stanham, and was brilliant for him, absolutely brilliant. Sorted him out. I think he also had diarrhea as well, and that also. So Stanham can be a grief remedy, actually, where there's a kind of feeling of emptiness, sad and empty feeling after grief. Okay, let's move on. Stage 15, TB, HIV. And this is now, we've reached the sort of this is about, life and death, basically. Are you going to live or die? Passionate. And at that point, people get very passionate. They've got to live every day like it's the last, to save the world from indifference of stage 14. Basilinum can have desire to save the world, sudden end, people trying to poison them, arsenicum. They feel poisoned. Nitrogen kids want to burst out of parental confines. So nitrogen is babies, who feel, that's the stage when the baby needs to get out. I've just got to get out of this womb. They feel smothered. It's really the end. Although stage 14 keeps up the appearance that everything is fine. Desperate, fearful, contrary. Of course, you've got arsenicum and phosphorus in this stage, so which we know very well, doing everything to obstruct the final dismantling. There's a strong distrust, resignation, suffocation, trapped, closing in, defiant, desire for change, no hope, no place for me in society. It can also be stage 15 is also suicide as well, very importantly. Bismuth is very much a suicide remedy. In fact, it's much better suicide remedy than aurum in many cases where suicide is the main aspect, either threatened or somebody has committed suicide. So this is a case. This is a Jan Scholten case. Endometriosis, very painful. Angry with her mother. She was not allowed to feel what she feels and think what she thinks. She was never allowed to be angry. Her mother was always making comments and criticisms. She had to adapt to her mother. She felt unsafe. She had the feeling that she was bad, just not good enough. She had an inner life which she did not show to the outer world. She felt socially isolated with the idea that she would be rejected if she were to show too much. She felt different from others because of her interest in paranormal things. I'm fascinated to see what so what is the remedy? I don't remember this case. Oh dear. Okay, that's really weird. I'm sorry about that. Oh no, wait a minute. No, I don't know. I don't know what this case is. I'm sorry about that. So I don't have a stage 15. I'm just trying to think what I've got up my sleeve. But bismuth, I think, is very interesting to talk about bismuth. I did a webinar on bismuth and suicide, and bismuth can be used. The bismuth salts can be used. For example, if the father committed suicide, you might give bismuth carb to the child. Or if the mum committed suicide or is threatening, oh yes, I know. Here we go. I was treating a woman and her daughter. The mum threatened to commit suicide, or was very kind of a bit suicidal, and the child was kind of very clingy, and was frightened that her mum would sort of leave her, basically. And and also had stomach problems, a lot of stomach cramps and pains. And the remedy I gave her was bismuth muriaticum, because it was about her mum. The mum wanted to commit suicide, or was threatening to, or was talking about it. And the child was clingy and was terrified that her mum would leave her. So that was, bismuth mur. You can also have bismuth phos if a friend commits suicide or is threatening, and bismuth oxidatum. So check out, if you're very interested in that, I've got there's a webinar on my website. You can find it in my CPD page, all about bismuth and other suicidal remedies. So stage 16, leprosy. So now this is like the embers. We talked about the embers, the ashes. It's the oxygenation. Oxygen is in this stage. So it makes absolute sense that it's about the oxygenation being burnt up, burnt out. All that's left of the ashes, the memories, putrefaction, also like stinky, rotten odor, ugly appearance. And sulfur is very much about beauty and ugliness and untidiness and stinkiness. And oxygen is probably the most abused remedy. They are begging, they are beggars, they're lazy, fantasy, they only they like just tolerate like a beggar. Oxydatums have some aspect of abuse. Stage 16 also can be about debt, so getting into debt. And keywords, there we go: offensive, putrid, fetid, dirty, disgust, ruins, tatters. Philosophy is just ideas, no kind of reality. It's just sort of head stuff. Bored, boredom, shit is all stage 16. I treated a man, he was 70 years old, and this was in Ireland, and a history of prostate cancer, and now he had high PSA count in his blood, PSA being an indication of cancerous activity in the prostate. He had been a successful film director, but now he's retired and he doesn't, all he's got is his memories, basically. He talks about the past a lot. He has, all that's left is the memories. And now, this is interesting. This is a case where you have to be a little bit flexible, because one might have thought that film director, so that means silver series. What's a silver series in the 16th stage? Well, it's tellurium, but it wasn't, because of the cancer, the prostate cancer. Selenium fitted much better. That was the remedy, because it's very much a prostate cancer remedy. And it fitted, it's in stage 16, but it fitted the sort of remembering what you've done, and it's got a little bit of connection with sulfur. So that was, and that really pulled him around. That was really good. PSA went down, and he was much better in himself as well. This was, oh yes, I had a woman I was treating. She was HIV positive, and she was very depressed. Her case was just one of complete victimhood. She was, there's a daddy long legs outside. I don't like daddy long legs. She was the complete victim. Had felt a complete victim. Everything was about what others had done to her. She blamed everyone. And the remedy I gave her was oxygen. The most victim remedy in the periodic table. You could also look at ozone, of course. Ozone has a slightly different aspect to it, because it's O3 rather than O2. So I think with ozone, there's a lot more sort of restlessness. But anyway, oxygen really helped her. And then we're coming to the end now. Stage 17 is syphilitic miasm, also influenza, destruction, letting go, the outcasts lost their place in the group, liberation, letting go. It can be letting go either with a grudge or with a sort of humor or tears. It's sort of letting go of something, or sex, of course. Fluorine is very much about sort of letting go sexually. Ulcers, apathy, lymph glands swollen, guilt, the court jester, the outcast, something completely lost. Can be panic. Stage 1 and stage 17 are sort of panic stages. Bullied, scapegoat, going out of the process, why drugs are syphilitic, magical quality, want to be free, more free than 16, more takes things, just takes things as if it's theirs, more with violence, or sort of stealing things, for example, and being condemned, being sort of an outcast, being sent out of society, separated from society, excommunicated. I treated a man during my HIV and AIDS years, when I was treating a lot of HIV and AIDS patients. This man was HIV positive. He had swollen testicles, and felt very guilty about sex, and had sleeplessness. And the remedy I gave him was, bromine, and that sorted that out. I mean, bromine is a remedy, one of the remedies for inflammation and swelling of the testicles, but it fitted very well with the guilt about the sex. Bromine has a lot of guilt in his picture. And then stage 18, our final stage, is sleeping sickness, but it's about a retreat. It's the calm before the start of another cycle. The retreat, the holiday. It could be somebody who's in prison. It could be someone who's in hospital. It's someone who's kind of a bit separate. It can be after the end of a relationship. It's the end of a cycle. Somebody has died and they're in this sort of no man's land, waiting for the next cycle to begin. After my dad died, actually, we talked about vacuum here. After my dad died, I felt very like, in the week between his death and the funeral, I felt like I was in no man's land. I felt like I was a bit lost, and yeah, sort of not numb, but just sort of in this weird in-between stage. And I took vacuum, and that sorted me out. It's very good. It can be about autism. These people can be quite ungrounded. It's the sort of autism and Asperger's-y stage. Do I have any? I don't think I've got. Have I got any cases? One thing to say is that Xenon has been. I've put it there. Xenon can be a remedy. Xenon actually can be used as an anaesthetic. It's not used because it's very expensive, but it's actually the best anaesthetic because it doesn't have any after effects. And Xenon can be used as a never been well since an anaesthetic. So you can add that to your repertory alongside phosphorus and acetic acid, and what other remedies else? Other remedies are there. Neon, I've given argon before to a woman whose kind of boyfriend died, and she's in this kind of in between stage. She's not working, she's not doing anything. She was just meandering around grief, and it didn't feel like Nat Muir. And there was lots of stuff about the sort of gas words that she used, bouncing around, and argon partially cured. It brought her. It did partially, because she needs other remedies as well, but it partially cured. So argon is in the silica series. So that's the end of a relationship. Silica is about relationships and friends and family. So the end of a relationship, it could be argon. So yeah, so there we go. What have I got here? There's a elemental haiku. These are the books. Well, actually, you can get all the all you need really is in cure.com. I'm just going to put that up on the chat thing. Cure.com is the thing to do. I mean, for £10, you will get all the cases you could ever want to back up all the remedies, and it's really a treasure house of information, and I wouldn't be without it. But there are some other quite nice books. Ulrich Welter wrote a nice book on the Silver series, and then of course, yeah, Scholden has. You have got the homeopathy in the minerals, homeopathy in the elements, and who's this? Leroux, Patricia Leroux wrote a book on the metals in homeopathy, which is also useful. They're all useful, and so that's the end of the thing. Now, I would like to invite you to my next. Just check the dates here again. I think it's the 10th of October. It's not. So I put September there. I don't know what I was thinking. It's the 10th and the 17th of October. So Lanthanize Part 1 and 2, well worth coming to. If you've enjoyed this, this will be the cherry on the cake. So please do come along if you fancy that. And yeah, thanks for hearing me out. And I hope you find any questions before we leave it. Anyone, any comments or what's this? Let's have a look. I know, sorry to ask so many questions, no problem. What stages would early and then advanced dementia, any remedies come to mind? Well, it may not be periodic table, it may not be metal. I mean, it's going to be probably, it'll either be at the very beginning of the, so you look at Baritas, of course, but you also look at, or alumina, or you look at the end of the periodic table. But, you know, it could be something, I mean, it could be the fish, you see the fish remedies are the ones now that are coming. There's fish, there's a remedy called Chara intermedia, which is a kind of it's a plant, it's a water plant, Chara intermedia, but the fish remedies are very much being used now for dementia and Alzheimer's. So it's difficult to say which remedy. I'm not sure it's necessarily periodic table. Anyone else? I know there's a lot of information here, and we've raced through it just to get to the end in a reasonable time. Obviously, you know, it's really just it's a jumping off point. Really, it's just a platform to start to perhaps explore further. I think the more you immerse yourself in it, the more you will be amazed. You'll be in a stage 4 amazement. It really is worth immersing yourself in it. You will find it will transform your clinical practice, and will give you much more precision. And then, of course, Scholten applied the periodic table to the plant kingdom, and that's a whole new world. And I'm going to, I think, do that in November. I'm probably going to do the plants again in November. So if you're interested in the plants, you know, I'll send you an invite for that as well. Okay, so lovely to have you along. It was only a few people here, but the rest have obviously either forgot about it or just thought they'd have a night off. Anyway, I'm going to love you and leave you, and have a lovely evening, and hopefully see you again. Bye for now.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.